Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Munro Podcast. And I'm here with Zarko Meseldzija. And he is the CEO of RecycLiCo. Now, I've been to RecycLiCo. I've done a couple of videos on what Zarko, with Zarko, actually, and what RecycLiCo has been doing. And I think it's time for an update. So, Zarko, welcome to the podcast. Thank you.
Good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, first off, I guess it might be good if we kind of let a few people know what exactly RecycLiCo does, apart from recycling lithium carbonate or lithium in general, or actually any of the elements that are associated with recycling batteries. But why don't you give us a little in-depth kind of description?
Yeah, well, we're a lithium-ion battery recycling and upcycling company, I like to say it, right? And really focusing on our patented technology. And I think when it comes to recycling, there's different ways to think about it, right? There's collection of batteries. There's obviously the shredding of batteries and what the industry calls more as like a black mass. Within that, you have lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, and graphite. But it doesn't stop there, right? I think this is where the RecycLiCo process comes in and actually being able to extract these materials. And I think it's one thing to be able to extract the materials, and I think the other is to be able to upcycle them. And I think this is where really key differentiator is for us, is what I mean by upcycling is actually creating that battery grade quality. Not just separating out nickel or cobalt or lithium, but um, producing that lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide into a battery grade quality. Or even when it comes to nickel, manganese, and cobalt, it's not just individually extracting nickel, manganese, and cobalt, but producing what's known as a precursor cathode material, right? So these are more near net final products that can go back into a battery cell, and which we've shown can go back into a battery cell. We have a lot of news releases. We've had many testimonials on this as well, where our material has been used back in lithium-ion battery cells for testing, and it's shown to equal or even surpass the performance of commercial grade qualities. So it's a high level. That's, I think, a very important part in creating a circular economy. I think when we think of the recycling industry in general, sometimes we see it as just taking in material and breaking it down. But with battery materials, we really want to create that circular approach, and
Right.
You can't just mine for all new materials.
Yeah, the upcycling is, everybody hears about recycling. And so we've got a couple of examples that actually you guys sent us. So this is recycled lithium right here. It's nice and white, but it didn't start off that way. This is black mass, and I can't imagine why they call it black mass, but there you go. And it all starts off with, this would be cathode scrap. So you see it all chewed up here, and that's, in essence, what everybody starts with. So recycling to the point of having lithium means that now I got to reformulate it. And I think this is one of yours here. This is PCAM. And so this would be kind of the material that I'd want to have if I was going to be manufacturing batteries, I guess, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I think I'm glad you showed those products, because you think about like where the waste is going to come from. Black mass coming from like all the shredded up material, but even cathode scrap. That's really important for some people to recognize, because EVs really just started getting to mass adoption right now, right? And I think what a lot of people I talk with say, well, we're not going to need recycling for many more years because EVs only just started coming out. But I think the important part for listeners to understand is that when you're making those batteries at the battery plant, there's a lot of scrap rate, and that's that cathode scrap where it can be recycled directly on site as well. And then you wanted to introduce it to like that really clean white looking lithium and that precursor material that's a mixture of nickel, manganese, and cobalt. And then really that's those are the two materials you need in making the cathode material in the battery, which is more than 50% of the value of the lithium ion battery. And I think when it comes to the total cost of the car as well, a pretty significant percentage in terms
Right.
of cost.
Right. And upcycling is a very good term. So people say, oh, I want to recycle. And I usually say, can we reuse it? And in essence, it's kind of like a reuse kind of a deal. It's different because you're going through many more steps. But at the end of the day, I like the idea of not having to go back all the way to square one and then clunk, clunk, clunk. And now I've got what I could have gotten from you early on. So to me, the upcycling process, I think, has a lot of merit, and quite well, actually, on the merit thing, I heard that the Taiwan Department of Investment review came out pretty good, and you and Zenith Chemical are working closely together. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our first. So I mean, our process. One thing about having great technology, that's great. We have patents for it, and that's one piece of the puzzle. But the next is, can you commercialize this technology? And with Zenith Chemical in Taiwan, they're our first JV partner. So our approach to our technology is to build commercial plants in partnership, and this will be the first one. We got the forming a joint venture in Taiwan is a process as well with legal documents. So that investment review was approved. I mean, the JV is formed, that is underway. And I think one thing you would really like, Sandy, is our approach and how we build these plants. When we look at kind of your conventional recycling plant, or what we're seeing out there, it's a very large, $100 million plus capex. This big standalone facility that's looking to receive material from multiple sources. But ours, building in partnership, we look at a more modular approach. Because one thing we're not really sure of in this industry is, when is the waste going to be there? Who's going to have the waste? And how much waste is there going to be, right? So we don't want to build a big billion-dollar plant for 2040 expectations. We're building more smaller modular plants, right? And with that Zenith one, that's estimated $25 million capex, 2,000 tons per year modular plant that we would build here in Vancouver. And then so you essentially build out the plant, break that up almost into Lego pieces, ship it over, have it commissioned, put together and commissioned. And that way we can actually deploy our technology globally and a lot faster. I think allows for a smoother transition instead of kind of preparing site and building then. So I think that approach is one where we can then implement our technology alongside a gigafactory or alongside an EV plant where this waste is being collected or produced as well. And then that allows for one more streamlined approach. But this will be our first commercial JV, so really proving out the commercial readiness of our technology.
So that is that the one you're going to be doing with Nanoramic?
So with the Nanoramic news we had was, I think when we look at Nanoramic, they just got the DOE loan or DOE grant, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it was 47.5 million. We're there as a partner and collaborator on the recycling side. In essence, I mean, I don't want to butcher Nanoramic's description of technology, but it's essentially the PVDF free technology for the cathode and anode, where you don't have that binder material, the fluoride, right? So fluorine free material. And working with them, I think what we want to demonstrate on the recycling side is that their material can be recycled more efficiently. But we also understand that regulations are coming into place where material like Nanoramics is going to be more sought after by battery manufacturers and EV companies because of those environmental benefits. And on top of all of that, not just how the material is made, but also the fact that it can be recycled a lot more efficiently because you don't have that binder. So we've we've shown that, and we continue to work with them on kind of demonstrating what our technology can do.
Well, I kind of like seem to think that I always forget something. One of the things that makes a company, as far as I'm concerned, is leadership. Actually, I think it's the only thing that makes a company. If you don't have good leadership, things don't happen. You've been running the show here for a bit, and quite frankly, I think you're very good at it. So one of the things I'd like to do is, can you provide us with a little background? I probably should have asked that at the beginning, but seeing as I just thought of it, can you probably give us a little background on you, actually, and how your, passion, I guess, got this place rolling?
For sure. I mean, I think, my background is in engineering, specifically mining engineering. So I worked mining, mineral processing, but always, going throughout my career, I always had a passion in electric vehicles, and the curiosity of kind of hit me as like, what are we going to do with all these end of life batteries at one point, right? And I was working for a mineral processing company. It's you're still dealing with same kind of metals that you would be dealing with in a lithium ion battery, and really even in some of these recycling techniques, it's quite similar. And I just kind of kept asking that question. Realized I have more of a passion for urban mining than I do for mining. I thought it was much more appealing.
Urban mining. It's a good,
Yeah,
good analogy.
yeah, I know. And
Well, we call those guys
I
here, they strip copper out of old houses. It's urban mining. Yeah.
But yeah, urban mining is. I mean, when you look at it, you look at some of these mining projects, even great mining projects, and ones that we really need in the world, and they're just chock full of environmental pushback, local protests, government protests, permitting.
Yeah.
You can't even get some great mines up and running. But with like recycling or urban mining, there's so much of a demand for it. There's so much of a push for it. Like you want that. You want to be able to recycle your waste. So I at the time found American Manganese was just kind of kicking off the work in lithium ion battery recycling, and just thought I would, I really wanted to join the team. It was a small team at that time, and still relatively are. And I just started off doing whatever was possible. I said, just I'll do anything. I actually really like this, and the CEO at the time, I think, liked my attitude on it, and slowly kind of progressed my way through to focusing on technology, and was being the CTO of the company, and then a year and a half ago transitioned to the CEO myself. So yeah, I do personally like the technology side. I like the engineering side of things, right? CEO comes with a different set of problems that you got to deal with.
CEO, the biggest problem with CEO is you're in charge of finding money. So how's that been going for you? Or dare I ask? That wasn't on my list of questions, but it's always something I guess I like to know about, because really and truly, it's the mother's milk. If you don't get money, you don't go anywhere. So we were talking earlier about the Consumer Electronics Show, and I was there for until Thursday or Friday, and I noticed one thing that was different than last year. Last year there was absolutely nobody walking around with pockets full of money, no investors whatsoever. This year, I saw two corporations that we've worked with in the past to do due diligence. I saw nobody last year, or the year before for that matter. And then this year, I saw two. So maybe that means that the financial guys are loosening up on their purse strings or something. So Have you had any issues?
No, I mean, we'll talk about, yeah, I think one thing I forgot to actually mention, I'll get to on the money side of things as well. I think when I had started as well as like 2016,
Yeah,
and then like I think Model 3 was just starting, like nobody was talking about battery recycling
yeah,
at that, like very, very few people knew about it, were even saying it would be kind of profitable. So it I've seen so many things change since then, and I think for us, on the finance side of things, we're a publicly traded company, so it's kind of an open book on that, right? You can
mm,
see how much cash we have if you'd really like, right? But um, for us, for example, the next steps in our first commercial joint venture, it's a 50-50 joint venture, and part we get part of our equity on bringing in our technology, and then also part is going to be cash from the company, which the company has. That company has that cash on hand, and then we have, you know, remaining amount with a good runway, to continue doing test work for companies, building these partnerships and relationships. And then I think really next steps are kind of what our capital needs is really going to depend on what does that second or third or fourth JV look like.
mm,
If it's another similar one like a 50-50 JV, and it's, our portion is a 10 million contribution to that project, those are areas we need to be thinking. But
mm,
one thing I will say is, given our modular approach and being more nimble in the way we handle our commercialization, it's I think it's a much more sustainable and manageable approach. If you think about trying to raise right now, $500 million for a project like major recycling project and taking on that huge risk, it's a lot harder to find money for that,
yeah,
right? But proving out that we're commercial ready now with the first one, I
yeah.
imagine second, third, fourth, all come easier as well, um, and it allows you to expand from there. So yeah, right now it's we have good runway. We are thinking about what are our needs going to be, for second, third, fourth JV, um, and with that, I mean, as a publicly traded company, there's different ways about that, and, raising funds for
Yeah.
for something like that. But yeah, it's something like you said, CEO's job is always trying to think about that and
Mm.
how can you prepare yourself and be ready for a time that's good in the market as well, and there's good opportunities ahead.
Well, you got one other opportunity that I read about a bit ago, and I might have the numbers wrong, but you're gonna put up a plant in Vancouver, right, for about 2,000 tons a year or something. Is that right?
No, so that's going to be the first JV that will go in
Oh, I
Taiwan,
see.
but the modular plants would be built in the greater Vancouver area.
Mm.
Um, so we're going more of that modular build, um, and then deploying that. So that 2,000 tons per year would be built here, but then commissioned, with our first partner.
So, is there any plans or opportunities to build in North America, or have you had any JVs that are around here? Because I mean, Taiwan's not a bad spot because you got China, and China is producing more batteries than everybody. So having them shipped, I don't know what that is, 150, 200 miles, to Taiwan is not a bad idea. But we should be able to see enough recycling that it could be profitable for you as well, shouldn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you have a lot of experience in Asia as well, and I think you talk about it as well, right? Where there's just the industry right now, and when you look at how much battery waste supply there is, battery
Yeah.
manufacturers, companies that want that material right away, like Asia's a hotspot. So having the plant there, I think, is quite strategic.
Hmm.
I think it's an industry that's really ready for recycled material as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, we have prospects in North America and Europe that we are working on. But I think what we're also seeing in North America and Europe is these plants, just getting on their feet right now. I mean, there's a few producing plants, and um, relative to the scale of like Asia, but we're getting kind of getting on our feet, so to say here, and that's going to build up a demand for recycling as well. So we are talking with a number of companies, and um, you know I like to call it JV prospects. I think the process of turning another one into like a JV2 or a JV3 is that does take time, that does take negotiation, that does take technical
Yeah,
due
yeah.
diligence. Right? It's not just a sign a contract and we'll take your waste off of you, and we'll give you back our product, but it's more of a partnership than anything.
Well, I would have thought that there had been something like something that would be beneficial for Tesla for sure, because they're already doing what they're doing, but also maybe Ford with the plant that they put up, and Stellantis for the ones that are going into Canada, and then General Motors. They're also in the process of building a plant. It would be a good idea if they incorporated the idea of maybe taking the waste, because there is always scrap, especially at the beginning of the process. You take that scrap away, and but it'd be a great idea if it was part of the architectural plans right now. Then it would be to, hey, I got a good idea. Let's put in a recycling plant, and oh shit, we turned that into the hospital or something. You're not going to move. So that it strikes me that would be something that they'd want to kind of plan for.
Yeah, I could tell you that the companies are thinking in that direction. I think I mean, we're in Canada here, so just thinking Canada alone, from Vancouver, we had the Molly Cell announcement where they're going to be building a plant, right? Plan for like 2028, I believe. You got Stellantis and LG. You got PowerCo in Ontario, Northvolt, BASF, POSCO, right? Like all those battery supply chain being built in like Ontario and Quebec. So they're being built up. I think there are strategic teams within those companies thinking about things like this. Um, but I think it's just kind of that get the plant up. There's thoughts on recycling, but that's all takes some time and technical review.
Well, I was born in Canada. Things were a lot different when I was in Canada. But what's the prospects now? Like we get secondhand news about what's going on up north, and what's the prospects of Canada moving a little more into EV production or battery production? I know about the Stellantis plant, the LG plant, and stuff like that, but that's making batteries. Usually, you have a car plant to go along with it. What's going on that might be interesting up there?
In terms of, I mean, last week or I think it was last week or a week before. Um, it's just I think rumored now, but even Honda is looking at,
Yep, that's right.
maybe
Yeah,
they'll fact check this number. It was 14 billion or
yeah,
18.4
I
billion
think it is. Yeah,
investment in battery and
yeah,
EVs. And I think PowerCo, or like Volkswagen, that is cells and EVs.
yeah,
If I'm correct, that's
yeah.
$14
That's
billion
yeah.
project.
Yeah, the Stellantis one and the VW plant, they're both kind of close to each other, I think, in Ontario. But I was walking more about, like I just read that your town, Vancouver, is now the most expensive place on the planet to live. So I was just dazzled when I saw that, and they brought out 65-year mortgages. That's like buying a mortgage in England for 100 years or something. So that's kind of, it sounds like kind of a deterrent to me for building a factory. If you have to have a 65-year mortgage in order to buy a house, it's kind of
It's
crazy.
I mean, it's extremely expensive here. I'd say like, you have condos and townhomes going for, you know, or condos, one bedroom going for over $500,000, right? And but still on the roads, I think one comment everybody always tells us when they come to Vancouver is I've never seen more Teslas on the road.
Yeah,
So I don't know
that's the
how
truth.
people afford these.
But the thing is that
Um,
that's what I noticed when I came to the EV show last year. And one of the, well, I don't know who he was, and I don't know if it's 100% true, but one of the people told me that Vancouver is the number one spot for Tesla as far as per capita basis. Tesla sells, actually, I don't think it was Tesla. I think it was EVs in general. It's the hottest market basically anywhere. More people with EVs per capita than anywhere.
yeah, I actually saw your Cybertruck interviews, and on that topic, the Tesla dealership that's the closest to me here was the first one to receive the Cybertruck for display. So I went obviously first day it came in, I went to go see it in person. Can only imagine what it was like to drive it for you, but
It
um
was
and
wild. Yeah,
and I asked, I was like, how come you guys got the Cybertruck out of anybody else? And said they were the top selling dealership in Canada.
yeah, yeah.
So that was kind of their reward to have that Cybertruck. But still, I mean, I think on the EV side, like Vancouver does have a lot. It's a warmer climate in most of Canada. But I think the weather the past little bit has been quite interesting to follow along with like EV owners in like Alberta and Saskatchewan, where we were just talking about it earlier, where with windshield it was like hitting minus 60 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
So there was a guy I was following on Twitter or actually X, and he was reporting kind of his battery life overnight in those conditions, and like showing the durability of the Teslas in these kind of conditions. So I think it's the number one thing that comes up all the time when it comes to like colder climates is like, will an electric vehicle be able to survive in this? And from what I'm seeing, he's actually doing pretty well.
Survive and thrive. Well, I used to be I was an engine engineer at Ford, and yeah, we had lots of situations when you get up north, and actually we did our testing in Winnipeg. Edmonton never really appealed to me. It's too damn cold. But anyways, we did our tests in Winnipeg, and we actually turned gas into Jello because of the cold. And people say, well, I don't want to have an electric car. It's battery will degrade and I'll be stuck. Well, you're not going to get stuck. But I will tell you that people that say that they'd rather have something because they're going to have a block heater or something like that, that don't work. And if you look at some of the videos that we've had, or not we've had, but other channels have had on YouTube, and you look at these guys, and the biggest problem is cheap chargers. I mean, Tesla chargers always work. ABB chargers always work. Others, not so much. And some of them, oh my God, like I don't want to get into it, but we had a storm, and it was I think it was what would that be? Minus 12 in Fahrenheit would be about minus 20, 25 or something like that in Celsius. And I'm telling you what, there was a very unhappy woman came to my house after she tried to charge up her Rivian at all the local yokels. It's one thing to have a Tesla, it's quite another. And now she just only goes over. She'll come in, she'll look at the sides of the, and my wife's, I don't know if you know, but she's got a PhD in engineering. and she'll read the sides of the cases, the boxes themselves. If it doesn't say ABB, she just keeps right on going. When she said, I can hardly wait until Rivian is this year is supposed to be able to allow you to charge with Tesla chargers, and believe me, she's going to be all in on that one. But so we're drifting away from what we were supposed to be talking about. But at the end of the day, I believe that sooner or later, the marketing people who invent all of the crap, like the one that I liked hearing. Well, I didn't like hearing it, but I heard it a lot, and that was that that the cost of recycling, or the cost of building, operating, and recycling of batteries versus an ICE system is much more polluting than going with the EV type of situation. So I looked at this lady and I said, "Where did you get that data from?" "Oh, everybody knows it." "Really? Well, I didn't know that. Can you kind of elaborate, because I do know what comes out of an exhaust pipe." And okay, so we've got the carbon dioxide down and we've got this down, but when you use it for a couple of 100,000 miles, it adds up a lot. But she was adamant. So you got any answers for this lady about the cost for recycling versus, or the impact of recycling versus the impact of, say, an ICE engine over its life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why these topics still come up with. I thought it'd be very, very clear, right? When it comes to it, right? Like, obviously, mining has a environmental footprint that it leaves behind, and for electric vehicles, we need to mine for different kind of metals, and but there's innovations going on to be able to use less of those metals as well, right? So that brings down the overall footprint of an electric vehicle. And then through the life of the electric vehicle, it's essentially like you're not polluting. And then the end of life, that's the big one I've always argued with people about as well, because what is commercially available right now, generally when you have like what happens to a waste end of life battery now is essentially smelting. It goes to smelting operation. It's called pyrometallurgy. So you're just burning the battery at very high temperatures, and obviously that is polluting, right? You don't recover lithium. You burn that off. You're really targeting cobalt and nickel and copper, and then really the form factor that you get it in after this high heat operation. Now you have to go through even more refining and processing to actually get it into battery grade quality, if it's going to go back into a battery. Otherwise it'll just be an intermediate product. So yeah, in a way, if we're going to recycle the tsunami of batteries coming in like that, that's not going to be wise. But that's why processes like ours that are commercializing innovative approaches, and it's just hydrometallurgy, right? You're not using high heat pyrometallurgy, um, and being able to do it in a way that you produce the end product in fewer steps. So you're not going through one process to get into an intermediate form factor and then going through another refining process to actually get into battery grade quality. Um, all of those things end up saving overall in emissions. I think we did a life cycle assessment with Munro out of the UK. It's a UK LCA
Yeah,
consultancy,
no, okay, yeah.
and yeah, they did a comparison to us of like our recycling process. So getting lithium out of our recycling process, or getting cathode material out of our recycling process, compared to mining for it. And obviously there was a benefit. But what we also did was our recycling process compared to competing recycling processes, right? Because it's pretty evident that recycling will be less impactful than mining. But what we also wanted to show is that our recycling process is less impactful than environmentally impactful than other recycling processes, right? And I think we always think about recycling as this just, it's always green. Um, and even if you aren't using like a high heat process, many of the ones I see now still use, like, just when you look at all the chemicals they use in their process, the organics, using solvent extraction, it just gets, it's so complex. You have a lot of wastewater you have to deal with and treat. Um, it's a high cost. So yeah, I think what we're really demonstrating as well as recycling isn't all green. There are more efficient ways of doing it. And ours, I believe, if I remember correctly, was a 62% reduction in CO2 equivalent emissions compared to those other competing processes.
Hmm.
So even within that kind of umbrella of recycling, there is a lot to be saved. And I think at the end of the day, as we get more into the commercialization of recycling processes, the market will naturally um, filter out, you know, companies that don't meet certain quotas,
Hmm.
or we're going to have targets on efficiencies of recycled material, efficiencies of emissions, and if you don't meet those, new benchmarks are constantly going to be set by legislation, and you're going to need to meet those targets. And I think naturally that's where the most efficient processes will come out and kind of take dominant market share.
Well, I'm sure you must be very proud of your accomplishments so far, but what do you think the apex of accomplishment is for you? You're personally, where do you think, what do you think you've accomplished that really makes you the super proud?
If you asked me a while ago, I'm always kind of pushing the goalposts on this. Is
Yeah,
probably not the healthiest thing to do to yourself, but
yeah,
um, for me, one of those big goals was to actually show the full circularity of battery materials. Not just saying recycling or saying we upcycle it, but now having companies on board who wanted to test those materials. And I think, like, when we showed that a battery cell can be made and used, and this material can infinitely be reused, um, was a big accomplishment. And then it's kind of the goalposts got pushed, and they're like, well, we need to be able to commercialize this technology. And now that's I think one of the biggest accomplishments for us is and the most work we've been doing now is getting this to um, built and commercial, and start operating at a larger scale. So not just showing that cells can be circular, but now doing it on a very consistent and commercial basis.
hmm.
And I'm sure the next goalpost will be till we're kind of on every continent in multiple areas, and
Hmm.
um, always gotta just set that new target.
Well, that sounds great. I've been asking all the questions, but maybe I haven't asked the right one. Is there something you'd like to add here to, uh, you know, drive home the points or whatever, or something we haven't talked about? Anything that you'd like to mention?
Well, maybe I'd like to ask you a question. Let me think on that one a little bit. But I have a question for you, because I know you're always analyzing different vehicles, and we're seeing this shift from battery cells to modules to packs, and we see Tesla making very innovative ways of just casting the
Yeah.
whole car and cell to chassis. you know for somebody taking them apart, how do you, because it's going to be important for a recycler. Now it's like you could take out cells or modules or packs, and you can remove it from the car and send that down its recycling route of being separated and shredded and processed. But now almost, it's, what are your thoughts? Is the whole car gonna almost have to go in the shredder at this point? Like,
No,
how easy has it been for you
no,
to separate this?
no. Dropping a battery is usually a piece of cake. Um, in fact, if it's a Tesla, it makes it easier because when we drop the battery, we also get out the seats, the center console, most of the wire harnesses. I mean, when that comes down, the seats are attached to the battery pack, and quite frankly, a good number of other things can come with it, like the rear seats. Those are a bugger to get in and out, hurt your back. Now we have a we have a lift mechanism that you could use to put the battery pack in, but we use it to get it out. And for us, it's made it a whole lot easier to do a teardown. And
What
then,
about
go ahead.
what about like the next kind of generation of like cell to chassis, or if it's
Cell to
kind of directly?
chassis, that would be kind of difficult because, quite frankly, I still think it's going to have to be a module. It's going to have to be a fairly large module. The battery module is huge. And making that module with the rest of the body surrounding it would be, I wouldn't dream of doing that. I think that, and quite frankly, I think that the more we get close to ADAS or self-driving situations, the more likelihood that there's going to be a change from the materials we use currently, steel or aluminum, for the bodies to something else. And the something else is probably going to be an inexpensive plastic. And the reason for that is because I don't have to paint it. It'll be lighter. It'll be stronger. But I won't have to worry too much about crashes because, in essence, as we move toward edge computing or faster computing, then what we'll see is that the car will take over, especially now that we have finally somebody has decided that what they're going to do is they're going to make it so that it's drive-by-wire. Once it's drive-by-wire, and I have an ADAS system that can respond to microseconds kind of bad situations. And I don't have to worry about someone who doesn't have the temperament for making fast decisions in a car. Cars won't get into crashes. It just won't happen. And by the way, the other thing that I can do is I don't have a real it's not like I've got an automatic transmission where if I slam it into reverse, you're just blowing the transmission up. With this, I just spin the motor in the opposite direction. So if I'm barreling along and I'm heading for basically an accident or a tree in the road or whatever, there's no reason in the world why I can't spin those electric motors backwards. The gears are engaged continuously, and I'm out of the way. I think there's going to be lots and lots of things that are going to happen in the next 10 years that's going to drive us towards something that there's a fellow named Francois Castaing, and Francois came up with something called the pop bottle car. And I had come up with something similar to that. We call it the club car, golf car. And in essence, everything was made out of plastic. Why? Well, not going to see any accidents. No reason at all to have steel. I mean, you put steel in a golf car, guess what you get? A rusted mess, because they use nitrogen all over the place in the grass, and it eats up it'll eat up steel quickly, but it chews up, turns aluminum into aluminum oxide eventually as well. Plastic doesn't care. It doesn't care if it gets wet. In fact, it likes to get wet. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to be moving away from things that currently we think are holies as far as design is concerned, and we're going to move toward materials that today we wouldn't even think of considering because we have to worry about crashworthiness. As we move in that direction, I think what you're going to find is that the battery module will still be the same. It'll be some sort of a module, but it's probably going to be in a plastic case. It's probably going to be, there's going to be less likelihood of having a bunch of giant steel parts around it. And so I think the recycling might turn into a situation where you remove the battery tray, and that goes in one direction. You move maybe a couple of steel longitudinals longitudinals that basically support the car, and they go for steel recycling, and the rest just gets chewed up and put in for remelt, and you turn it into a car again. Or into some sort of plastic anyway. So I think that's what we're going to see in 10 years. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
Well, I think, and that's a good point, because I know you asked me kind of if there's anything else I want to add, and I think that would tie in really well because in the recycling industry as well, we get asked a lot. There's new battery technologies coming out. So I think you always got to stay flexible. You got to stay innovative. You got to know what's coming out there, right? Like you hear, can we still recycle solid state batteries? Can we do this? Can we do that? Right. And all of these things we have to be aware of ourselves. So we can't really go out and reach too far thinking this is the definitive future of, battery recycling. So for us being, this more nimble approach is, I think, really key to us, because you also see battery. Actually, one final note, you see, with this year we had an announcement, but you see with battery chemistries, it's constantly changing. So if we had a process that would only recycle NCA cells or only recycle NMC cells, well, now this influx of LFP would ruin us, right? And because now you need a way to recycle LFP. And for us this year, so far, we had a news release where we shared that an Asian battery materials company took our lithium carbonate and tested it in LFP cells. So we're kind of constantly on our toes, making sure our material applies well in next generational battery technologies like nanoramic. Our recycling technology applies into new materials like LFP. When there's no nickel or cobalt or manganese, it becomes technically less profitable for a recycling company, which is only why you need that much more of an efficient process to make the most out of the lithium that you can get out of LFP as well, right? So exactly what you said. I mean, you have a vision for 10 years down the road, and I think we're thinking that same way of how are we going to line up with recycling, and how are we going to plan for what's to come.
Well, based on what I've seen, I think that recycling is going to have to be agile, to say the least, because I've seen at least a half a dozen new chemistries that have come down the pike, including crystalline. I would have never ever thought that we'd be going into quartz. I really think that agility is going to be the thing that everybody's going to have to think about. If you get stuck in one process or one mindset, your chances of success kind of are going to evaporate. But if you look at everything at an early enough stage, you should probably be able to make almost anything work. And in the case of solid state batteries, where it's hard to say what your substrates might be, but I think that at the end of the day, there's always going to be some clever way to make things happen. And I know that one of the key factors that people are talking about right now is where are we going to get the electricity to run these cars and the batteries? How are we filling them up with? Well, one of the things that I saw at the Consumer Electronics Show that filled me with promise was the Doosan showing off a nuclear power plant. You know what? They got a clever idea there that I've never seen anybody use anything quite like that before. And, that's pretty clean and it's dirt cheap. When I was a kid in Canada, I mean, they had to add the water bill to your electric bill so that it was a bill that was worth a postage stamp to send in the check. So, I mean, I know that it could be less expensive and whatnot. I know there's a stigma, all the sad-faced people that don't want to have it, but I believe that with electrification of pretty much everything, I believe that we're going to be moving into something where recycling is going to be, that's going to be pretty important, really important, actually. So I commend you on the work that you're doing. I think you're doing a fine job. And I'm going to probably be pestering you for other interviews. Are you going to be at the electric show in Vancouver again? I heard there's another one. Yeah.
To do it again, yeah, well, for sure. If it's in Vancouver, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well.
Hopefully we'll see you a couple more times as well and see the progress we got going on.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, anyways, I'd like to thank you very much, Zarko, for giving us some of your time today. And I wish you all the best luck on the planet. And let's, keep in touch. I definitely want to be able to see I definitely want to be able to see one of your plants in operation in Canada one of these days, or the United States. There's plenty of battery plants that are going up around here, so it'd be great if we
Yeah,
could
I
see
mean,
that happen.
work in progress.
Yeah,
Hopefully we can get some announcements out there.
great. Sounds good. Again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.